I think we can begin with a word of prayer. Lord Heavenly Father, we thank you for the wonderful day which you have given us, the Sabbath day, O Lord, to come, O Lord, and to reflect, O Lord, on your studies. I ask you in a most special way, O Lord, that you may bless the flow of technology. I pray for everyone that they may have a good connection, O Lord, and I ask you that you may be with us, O Lord, throughout the day and for us throughout the week. Lord, I pray in the wonderful name of Jesus. Amen. Um, so I'll be going through the study on the line of restoration, especially looking at equality. Uh, so we'll just go through the slides that are shared on the screen. I don't know if everyone can see the slide on or on the screen that says the line of restoration, our road to equality. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can see.
Oh, okay. Um, okay. What I want to do is that we'll just go through it. But if anyone could like tell me how did we come to studying equality, if anyone could tell us that, you or you could unmute, and I think I just gave it away though. Does anyone want to try? Hello. Okay, it seems like I'm not getting anyone.
It's
Okay, so there's the
kind of
question.
restoration.
Now we know that. Hello, Sister D.
Yeah, we derived it from the lines of restoration.
Yes. But what were we initially studying for us to actually come to the line of equality?
The king of the north and the king of the south and their relationship with the relationship between the
Amen.
church and the state.
Yes. Actually, that was the answer that I was looking for. And John Mashangu says it came about through understanding the incorrect order of how did equality become a subject of Bible prophecy. We know that for years in the movement, when studying the subject of Daniel 11, we focused more on the events taking place with the king of the north, and we lost our focus on the development of the king of the south. So in 2016, we began to study the world wars. And what we noticed about the world wars is that um, the king of the south and king of the north, they are both, I could say, equal when we look at actually the model of geography. So we're going to move to the next slide. Geography, it teaches us what so the model of geography teaches us the location of the North Pole and the South Pole. And what we learn from that is that we learn that the North is just that I didn't put out this illustration is icy and cold on the North Pole and the South Pole as well. It's icy and cold between on both poles. So what we notice about that is that when we compare them, we can see similarities that the North Pole and the South Pole, they are both cold and they are icy. So they are the same. And this is nature uh, telling us this because we know from that. Um, and the same with the King of the North and the King of the South. We see that the King of the North is the church and state relationship, and the King of the South is a state and church relationship. So that's how we came to a point of studying equality. And the line of restoration, it just explains. I could say it becomes even more personal to us. So I'll move on to the next slide. Can I ask, am I going too fast or what?
Your pace is just perfect.
I hope I'm not. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Um, so okay, equality, the test for our time. Now, during the Earth history, we have seen the effects of sin on the world and in humanity. We have seen it through our first parents in the Garden of Eden, throughout the patriarch to ancient Israel, into the 1260 to modern Israel. So this is the effect of sin that happened in the world and throughout humanity. Sin has caused both humans and nature to suffer very badly. But though, just like a wounded skin, nature and humanity is in the process of healing. I don't know if anyone, when they were young, they used to go out and play maybe around the park or something like that, and then maybe one while playing, you 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 fell, or maybe uh, yeah, you fell, or maybe you're riding a bicycle and then you fell and then you get a bruise on your skin at first, which is something I'm going to illustrate further. But what I want to point out is that when you have a wound on your skin, the pain at the beginning. So just when you get that pain, when you fall down and get a bruise, the pain is very intense. It's very painful. But as time goes on, and when your body starts to heal, and the beginning and the pain at the end, there's no they're like the difference is that you start to notice when you healing, and your bruise will end up, the only thing that's going to be there at the end of the day, it's maybe going to be your scar sometimes, depending on the bruise, but sometimes the scar goes away completely. I hope i hope everyone understands the process of a healing wound. And it goes as well with our study today. We want to understand how God is restoring uh, the effects that sin has uh, the effect of sin that has happened throughout humanity. So the test of our dispensation is sexism, racism, and conspiracy theories. So I would like to suggest that these are the bruise or the wounds that played an effect in that played an effect in um, after sin, that came after sin, and these are at the process of being healed or of being solved or restored back to God's original plan, because God didn't want humans to be sexist or racist or develop Satan's method, which is conspiracy theories. So, conspiracy theories aside, it's racism and sexism, the two issues of discrimination. We'll be dealing with the two stories today, the stories of gender and racial discrimination. We know how these two um, impact us in our daily life. So it's something that we're going to look into. That's why I want to focus on that as well. They both have a common link. Both have their beginnings in the book of Genesis. So we'll be looking at the book of Genesis. Both involve the common parents from which every human being on the planet came from. Both parents were equal until sin was introduced into the family. Because of that, inequality was introduced. So this is like a cause and effect type of method. So this is a type is as I said, it's a cause and effect. Initially, we were supposed to be equal human beings. We were supposed to be in a perfect state of happiness. But because of sexism, they developed into our life through slavery and the mistreat of women. So I wanna go back to the analogy that I made, the process of a healing wound. While I was doing this study, this actually came into my mind. You know, I like the method that we use of nature to spiritual, the natural, first the natural, then the spiritual. I've noticed that every day nature is speaking uh, of God's grace and of God's prophecies, even I could put it that way. When I looked at the stages of wound healing, I saw a very interesting, but this is a very interesting stages and development. So they have the when the skin or a bruise is healing, it has four different types of stages that it goes through. Oh, okay. There's a question. How do we link conspiracy theories with equality? Um, Unfortunately, I won't be able to answering the relationship between conspiracy theories with equality, because my main focus today is about sexism and racism. But I know that there are studies out there um, that speaks about conspiracy theories, but I don't think there's a link in them. But that's not my focus for today. So Brother John, please forgive me. Our focus today it's on equality. That's why I said conspiracy theories aside. So yeah, I was explaining that the four stages of a healing wound. You get bleeding, inflammatory proliferative and remodeling. So I would like to
That's all.
to that. Can people still hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
I can mask numbers, yes.
Can people still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Thato.
So it's bad network. So I don't know when did it uh, shut down or something.
You were about to explain the process of restoration.
Oh, okay. That means I'm not. Okay, let me try to. Is the screen still showing? I think I need to share the screen again.
Please share again. It has disappeared.
Oh, I see. Okay. So yeah, I was I was saying that when we were young, when we used to go out and play at the park, our parents would usually say that when going out and play, be careful, take care of yourself, make sure you don't get hurt. You know, so this is uh, maybe your mom, or dad, or an adult supervision telling you that you need to be careful on how you play so that you don't get hurt. But somehow, because we were young, we would like to not be careful or try to prove things that I won't get hurt, let me do this, or don't ride the bicycle fast, I won't, I won't fall and things like that. So you be disobedient to the instruction that your parent tells you. And then what happens is that because you're disobedient to the instruction, it results into wound and pain. And then you as a child, you start crying, and the pain by then, it's intense, it's very deep. We know how when Adam and Eve sinned, after they sinned, they really felt the pain of losing what they had. So this is that point, that initial point. But uh, throughout the healing, you don't cry anymore because you can see the pain might be there, but as time goes on, let's say from bleeding, this is like the first stage. From bleeding, then inflammatory, it may last a few days, then po life retive, it it may last also a couple of days, and then it ends up to remodeling, where now you don't start, you don't feel the pain, even you can touch where you wounded and not feel a pain. And then the next time when your parent says be careful, play nicely and things like that, you have learned from the experience, and you are more careful now this time. So as a child, you learn the lesson to be careful next time. I hope everyone understand this. Yeah, when I saw this, I saw it as like it was so amazing. And what I want to point out is that this is actually the line of progression. Now, the line of progression, it's a line from one point to another, and it has a development in it. And with the line of progression, you cannot reverse the line. You cannot go from uh, you are healed and then you are unhealed. if if people could understand, that's not nature. That's not how nature works. and that's not how the line of progression works. You cannot go from maybe let's say you moved from you cannot go from now. I could say that maybe let's look at the stages of a wound healing. You cannot go from remodeling backwards to bleeding. Nature doesn't work like that. I hope everyone understands. So we're now going to go into now the story of Noah, our parents, our common parents, and this is the story of racial equality. So we know that God saw the I hope everyone can hear me. Yeah. So God now begins a new earth, and in this new earth, this is after the flood. So in this new earth, we find that there is equality amongst Noah's family. We know why the reason God destroyed it. It's because earth was wicked with idolatry and a lot of things which were not the original intent of God. And God now begins a new creation, a new earth. And then you have a new earth and a common parent, which is Noah. So when we read Genesis 9:18 to 29, we see the curse of Canaan. We see the curse of Canaan. Maybe we could read few verses. We're not going to read everything. The story behind this, that this is the curse of Canaan and how he's going to become a servant to his brothers. So I'm just looking for a verse where the curse is laid upon Canaan. Okay, so we're going to read Genesis 9, verse 20, and then, okay, not 20, but okay, maybe 20 to 27. But we're just gonna paraphrase. So I'm just gonna paraphrase the verses. Just a second as I open my Bible. Okay, so we now in, and okay, verse 20 says, and Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And then verse 21, and he drank of the wine and was drunken and saw the nakedness of his father. So I think he will be punished for not responding in a proper way. And we see this by verse 23. Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their fathers. So here we see how Ham was supposed to respond, at least to his father's nakedness, but uh, he chose to not do what Shem and Japheth was doing. And then 24, Noah woke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done. And then verse 25 is the one now we start to see this effect of racial inequality. And he said, Cursed be Canaan. This is verse 25. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. So we see that Canaan goes or is cursed to be a slave to his brothers. And then when we read from Patriarch and Prophets 118.1, the prosperity, the
Following what year? Patriarchs and Prophets 118, paragraph 1.
Of heathenism. Through the prophetic curse had doomed them to slavery, the doom was withheld for centuries. God brought with their impate and corruption until they passed the limits of divine forbearance. Then they were disposed and became bondmen to the descendant of Shem and Japheth. So this is the curse that came unto Canaan. And then this curse will go obviously throughout history. It's gonna even change the form of slavery, obviously we know in our time. And then we're gonna go through the story of Abraham. So in Genesis 17, verse 23, it reads, And Abraham took Ishmael, his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the selfsame day. Okay, with this we see that Abraham bought people. So he bought slaves. He was a slave owner. Abraham had slaves. He was a slave owner and circumcised every male that he bought. So these people had no choice that Abraham bought. They were his possession. So we see that slavery or this effect of sin goes, or this effect of the curse of Canaan goes on also even to Abraham. And then we come to ancient Israel. Brethren, are we still following? I hope I'm not losing anyone. Ah, oh,
Yes.
okay. Are we following? Okay. I thought the internet went there for a moment, but okay. So ancient Israel. When we go to ancient Israel, we have two histories. We have the Alpha of ancient Israel, which is the time of Moses, and we have the Omega of ancient Israel, which is the first advent of Christ. So we're gonna begin in Leviticus 25, verse 35. Also here, I'm going to paraphrase. I'm not going to read everything. So Leviticus 25, verse 35. Let me just turn there. So here, okay, just to give the story before I read. So here we see a distinction between the Israelites and the non-Israelites. And the Israelites, they have some sort of a passport that tells them that they that grants them a set of rights that belongs to them. And then the non-Israelites, they, they, they don't have equal rights as the Israelites. So verse 35 of Leviticus 25, verse 35. And if thy brother be waxen poor and fallen in decay. So this is an Israelite who is poor. It's going to tell us how he should be treated. Thou shalt relieve him, yea, though he be a strong or a son, that he may live with thee. I think it begins. Okay, let me see. I think it be. Hello.
We are still here.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this is a poor Israelite, and a poor Israelite compared to slavery is treated much better. So we go to verse 36. Take thou no usury of him or increase, but fear thy God, that thy brother may live with thee. Thou shalt not give him thy money upon usury, nor lend him victuals for increase. I am the Lord your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan. Okay, then we go to verse 39. And if thy brother that dwelleth by thee be poor and be sold unto thee, thou shalt not compel him to serve as a bond servant. So an Israelite who's poor shouldn't be treated as a slave. This is what we get from verse 39. But as an hired servant, so I think he's going to get paid for whatever he will be helping you with. He shall be with thee and shall serve thee until the year of Jubilee. And the year of Jubilee is actually the year where I think you need to release him. He will be no more your servant or someone who's working for you. And then verse 41, and then shall he depart from thee, both and his children with him, and shall return unto his own family, and unto the possession of his fathers shall he return. And then verse 42, for they are my servants, which I brought forth out of the land of Egypt, and they shall not be sold as bondmen. And then it continues to say, verse 44, both thy bondmen and thy bondsmaid. So now it starts to speak about those who are in slavery in Israel. Which thou shalt have shall be of the heathen, and that are round about you. Of them shall ye buy bondmen and bondsmaid. Moreover, the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall ye buy of their families, and are with you, which they beget in your land. So I hope everyone can see the difference between an Israelite and a non-Israelite. They one can come and serve you, but it's gonna be something like you need to pay that person. And then one is like your position. It's gonna be obvious. It's slavery. And then slavery, it even goes throughout the time of Solomon. So we're gonna turn our books on First King, verse 9, 10 to 20. I hope everyone is following. Can I at least get an indication that we are following?
First Kings chapter.
First Kings chapter 9, verse 10. And then to 20, 10 to, you're gonna read 10. If someone else could read, my voice is a bit dry now. if someone else could read First King 9, 10, and then you're gonna skip and then read 20, 21, and verse 22. Hello?
First Kings 9, verse 10.
Yes.
And it came to pass at the end of 20 years, when Solomon had built the two houses, the house of the Lord and the king's house. And you're saying,
Yes.
jumping to verse 20?
Yeah, to verse 20. So here Solomon is building the temple. And then verse 20.
And all the people that were left of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites were not of the children of Israel. Their children
Yes.
that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel were not able utterly to destroy, upon those did Solomon levy a tribute of bond service unto this day. But of the children of Israel did Solomon make no bondmen, but there were men of war, and his servants and his princes, his captains and rulers of his chariots and his horsemen.
So slavery, thank you, Sister D. So slavery continues throughout the even the time of Solomon's rulership. Um, that's what we get from these verses. And then we will jump into now Omega of ancient Israel. And then we go into the first advent. What I would like to bring here is that we start to see, I can, you remember, like I want you to keep that picture of stages of a healing wound. You remember the different stages. And I've put out a question. When looking at the stages of of a healing wound, does the wound get worse or does it get better throughout the stages? It's a question that I'm asking to people who are listening. Can Does anyone want to respond to that?
Yes, it gets better.
It gets better. Yeah, I see that. I see that Slungile, it gets better. So yeah, it gets better. So here it's like that stage of um, healing that shows its effects when we get to Omega of ancient Israel. Slavery is not as intense as it is in Alpha of ancient Israel. So when we read Ephesians 2, verse 11 to 14, Sister D, I'd like to know how many minutes am I left with?
So you started at 10. You should have had about an hour and 15 minutes. So you have until 11.
Oh,
So that
okay.
means
So
you have about 30 minutes to go.
30 minutes. Okay. Um. Okay. So I think because of time, which yeah, but I think we can read Ephesians 2, verse 11 to 14. Ephesians 2, verse 11 to 14. Okay, it reads, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision, by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands. Verse 12. That at the time ye were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. And then verse 13. But now in Christ Jesus, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Christ. Verse 14. For he is our peace, who had made both one, had broken down the middle wall of partition. I think this is where we see now the mercy of God for those who have been who have suffered the most by slavery, because now things begin to change. Now Christ is focusing on removing that line. So we saw how, when looking at Leviticus, how well was an Israel treated compared to a non-Israelite, a Gentile, I could say. So in this history, so now in this history, Gentiles and Jew have no distinction, and they both have, I could say, commonwealth. They both can have the same things, the riches that an Israel and a Jew can acquire during this time, even though it was not 100% solved, but at least Christ was trying to remove that line, that wall of partition. And when reading Acts of the Apostle 19 to 20, I'm just gonna summarize. I'm not going to read all of it. So Acts of the Apostle 9, page 19 and 20. So here, okay, I'm just gonna paraphrase what we get here. The most important thing is that in 19 paragraph 2, during his earthly ministry, Christ began to break down the partition wall between Jew and Gentile, and to preach salvation to all mankind. So we see the breaking of that partition. And so that this was like the okay, and then we jump into Acts of the Apostle, page 20, paragraph 1. Thus Christ sought to teach the disciples the truth that in God's kingdom there are no territorial lines, no caste, no aristocracy, that they must go to all nations, bearing to them the message of a Savior's love. So God's main theme here is that he doesn't want to make a distinction between Jew and Gentile. And what happens is that he tries to break down that partition. And Romans chapter 10, 11 to 13. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness. No, verse 11. For the scriptures said, whosoever believe on him shall not be ashamed. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek. For the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Yes, so this is where we start to see that nature of healing this inequality between the racial issue. Okay. Oh, thank you very much, John, for sharing. Uh, thank you. Okay, so but then there's still a problem actually, and we notice this problem with these verses, Ephesians 6 verse 5 and Philemon 1 verse 10. We see that um, this issue of slavery is not 100% raised out. Just like a wound, as time goes, it's not 100% healed, but it takes time to heal. So Ephesians 6 verse 5. Can anyone read that for us? Ephesians 6 verse 5.
Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart as unto Christ.
Yes. So this is, I could say, an advice to servants and masters. So we see that nature of slavery still being embedded in this history of Omega of ancient Israel. And in Philemon verse 10, chapter 1, verse 10, we see the story of Onesimus. Yeah, Onesimus. I hope I pronounced that well. It says, verse 10 to 16, it says, I beseech thee for my son Onesimus, whom I have begotten in my bonds. And then verse 11, which in time past was to thee unprofitable, but now profitable to thee. Verse 12, whom I have sent again, thou therefore receive him that is mine own bowels. And then it goes on. And then verse 16, I want to go to verse 16. Not now as a servant, but above a servant, a brother beloved, especially to me, but how much more unto both in the flesh and in the Lord. So this is a story about, I think, this brother who is a runaway servant to his master. But we get his story in Acts of the Apostle 456. It's gonna tell us in details what's happening with him. So I'm trying to go there. 456. Okay, so it reads Acts of the Apostle 456, paragraph 1. Among those who gave their hearts to God through the labors of Paul in Rome was, hello? Is everyone still, can everyone still hear me?
Yes, Thato.
Yes, we can proceed, my brother.
Okay. So among those who gave their hearts to God through the labors of Paul in Rome was can't pronounce this. His name, a pagan slave who had wronged his master Philemon, a Christian believer in Colossus, and had escaped to Rome. In the kindness of his heart, Paul sought to relieve the poverty of distress and the wretched fugitive, and then endeavored to the shed light of truth into darkened mind, Onesimus lightened to the words of life, confessed his sin, and was converted, faith of Christ. And then it goes on to paragraph 2 and 3 throughout, even throughout even page 459. But I want to go to 457, paragraph 3. So I'm reading from 457, paragraph 3. The apostle asked Philemon, in view of conversion of Onesimus, to receive the repentant slave as his own child, showing him such affection that he would choose to dwell with his former master, not now as a servant, but above a servant, a brother beloved. He expressed his desire to retain Onesimus as one who would minister to him in his bonds, as Philemon himself would have done, though he did not desire his service unless Philemon should of his own accord to set the slave free. So it was Philemon who should free Onesimus. So there's is that a question? Okay. Yeah, to those who are sharing thank you very much. At least now everyone could see where I'm reading as well. So Philemon had the authority to either free Onesimus or to not free him. So this is Paul's letter to Philemon, and this is what it says. We see that slavery is still there, actually. So now we go to modern Israel. I think I'll only cover the racial inequality, or the racial inequality. I won't go into, because of time. I'm left with 15 minutes and I can only cover this part. So when we go into the 1260, the same as what we see in Egypt, God's people. Hello? Can people switch off their mic, and they can, if they've got a question, they can put them on the chat. Okay, so when we look at Egypt and the 1260, they are actually similar. In Egypt, brethren, please switch off your. Can someone help me switch off the brethren's mic? Hello? Okay. So what we see in Egypt and 1260, almost these two histories are, I could say, very much similar. God's people have been persecuted. They come out of Egypt. And then in the 1260, which is modern Israel, God's people are persecuted for 1260 years. Then they come out. And then God opens up a glorious land, which is Canaan, for them, to the new glorious land, USA. And then they face this problem that it is populated. Even when the children of Israel came out from Egypt, and when they went to the land of Canaan, they saw that already there were people living there. So what needed to happen is that war began to happen. There was a war. We know the story of Joshua. He was fighting the those who were living in Canaan. So we see genocide, killing of all the nations and bringing in slavery. When the Israelite fought in war, the other nation, if they surrender, they would be slave, obviously, among the the Israelite. And then even in modern Israel, when the Protestant came to USA, they saw the native Indians, and then there was war among the native Indians, which is known as American Indian Wars. It took time around the 1600, but I'm not sure when, but around the 1600, when the Americans came, when the Protestant came to America, USA. And then we go to modern Israel, which begins in 1798. And then in 1798, we see the development of the issue of slavery. In First Testimony 264.1, we see that Ellen White says that slavery is sin. Okay, so yeah, we see that slavery is sin. Maybe we can read that. First Testimony 1T 264. If anyone is there, can someone please read it for us if someone is there? Because I'm still looking for it. Okay.
No.
Okay, let me read. God is punishing this nation for the high crime of slavery. He has the destiny of the nation in his hand. He will punish the South for the sin of slavery and the North for so long suffering its overreaching and overbearing influence. So here we see that slavery is sin. I hope everyone is still following. And then, but what we get in this history is that segregation of white and colored, it's still there. It's something which is still there. And in 9 Testimony 204 and 206, Ellen White doesn't discourage segregation, but like she says that there needs to be division amongst white and colored because of obviously the history of segregation during her time. And then there's no intermarriage. We find that in 2 Selected Message 343. And then we have a civil rights movement around the 1960s. Around the 1960s, we see a beginning of a civil rights movement, which are fighting the segregation of white and colored or black people amongst in USA. So it's in this point where we actually come, I could say, in the last stage of that healing wound, that part of remodeling, but it's not yet solved because of segregation. And it's in the history of Ellen White that we see how racism is like at the it's very intense here. Racism is very intense. Slavery might have been done away with, but racism is the one that is affecting people during Ellen White's history. And even when we go to our history, which is omega of modern history, in 1989, there's no segregation. If you want to go to a white school, you could go to a white school, and when you're black, and there is intermarriage. If you feel like you want to marry a white person, I think you can do that. It's not illegal, just like when it was during modern Israel. And then black, colored, and people and white, they can fellowship together. We can see all around the world that people can now fellowship together, and that's actually good. We also in the movement, we have different races all around the world. And it's in 2008 where we see how I could even say that this wound has been healed. When we see a black leader in the United States, when we see a black president, and this black president is actually the last hope for USA. And then we go to New Earth, where equality will be restored in its complete form. So, brethren, I'm supposed to be going to our next common family, which is Adam and Eve, which is the story of gender equality. But I'm left with 5 minutes, and I cannot pull it through in 5 minutes. But I suggest that I should end here, and I don't know.
How much time do you need, Thato?
Hello?
How much time do you need?
I think 15 minutes will be that will be okay. I think 15 minutes will be okay.
Okay.
But I'll be doing something that I don't like doing, which is rushing.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be doing something which I don't like to do, which is rushing. So, but I hope people, everyone will understand though. So that was the history of racial equality. Now we go into the history of gender equality. Our common family being Adam and Eve. We have another one common family in Eden. They were created with total equality. And then we get that in Patriarch and Prophet, page 46, paragraph 2, and page 58, paragraph 3. I think we could read 46.2. If someone could read that for us, if you are there. Okay. Okay, I'll read. And can someone open Paycheck and Profit 58.3? And then when I finish reading this, can they also read 58.3? God himself gave Adam a companion. He provided an helpmeet for him, a helper corresponding to him, one who was fitted to his companion and who could be one with him in love and sympathy. Eve was created from a rib taken from the side of Adam, signifying that she was not to control him as the head, not to be trampled under his feet as an inferior, but to stand by his side as an equal. So this is what we get, is that both Adam and Eve are equal. And because of this, we could highly and even be confident that God wanted this. God didn't want inequality between a man and a woman. God wanted equality because this was his original plan, you know, and the inequality that we see today amongst women, it's challenging God's initial plan. I hope that we understand that. I don't know how much I can even emphasize it. So did someone open Patriarch and Prophet 58.3? Can they read it for us?
I'm reading the whole paragraph.
Okay.
Okay, I can read.
Yes. I'll let you know when to stop though.
Okay. Eve was told of the sorrow and pain that must henceforth be her portion. And the Lord said, Thy desire shall be to thine husband, and he shall rule over thee.
Mm.
In the creation, God had made her the equal of Adam. Had they remained obedient to God in harmony with his great law of love, they would ever have been in harmony with each other. But
Yes.
sin had brought discord, and now their union could be maintained and harmony preserved only by submission on the part of the one or the other.
Okay.
If
I think we can stop here. So
okay,
this is actually thank you very much. This is explaining the result of sin or the effect of sin that brought inequality between a man and a woman. And